On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Brian Chee, Mr. Curt Franklin on the show today. Now, we've heard about the market trends around no-code and low-code platforms and just how they're helping organizations digitally transform. The question is, do they create security risk? Plus, we have a great guest today, Alex Iceman. He's founder and CEO of Genium. We're going to talk about the journey of an entrepreneur, plus market trends for businesses and the type of talent they need to meet the demand of the secure world. You shouldn't miss it. TWiET on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 509, recorded September 2nd, 2022, with the Genium out of the bottle. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by New Relic. Use the data platform made for the curious. Right now, you can get access to the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigabytes of data per month free forever. No credit card required. Sign up at newrelic.com/enterprise. And by UserWay.org. UserWay is the world's #1 accessibility solution. It's committed to enabling the fundamental human right of digital accessibility for everyone. When you're ready to make your site compliant, deciding which solution to use is an easy choice to make. Go to userway.org/TWiT for 30% off UserWay's AI-powered accessibility solution. And by Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat discussing tech topics big, small, and strange. Listen to Compiler on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Welcome to TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through this big world of the enterprise. But I can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field. He's net architect at Sky Fiber, network expert, security connoisseur, you name it. Plus, he's an all-around tech geek. He is Mr. Brian Chee. Brian, how you doing, my friend? What kind of trouble are you getting into this week?
I'm actually rebuilding a Lenovo, well, I guess you call it a tiny PC. The whole idea is the makerspace, someone's managed to kind of corrupt it. So I'm going to start from scratch and put a fresh copy of Windows 10 because sadly it doesn't meet the hardware requirements for Windows 11, but that's all right. It's driving some vinyl cutters and 3D printers, and I'm hoping to get it back to the makerspace this weekend.
Now, what you said it's driving wire cutters?
No, vinyl cutter.
Vinyl cutters. I'm sorry. Wait a second. That sounds strange. Vinyl cutters. So it's almost like a little mini CNC machine then.
Yeah. Well, we actually have a full CNC that'll do a full sheet of plywood. But these are tiny ones. We've got a E-size vinyl cutter, so we can do posters, big banners and so forth. We also have a small Cricut to do that.
Oh, nice.
And then it's also being used to drive a bunch of Delta Maker 3D printers.
Awesome. Fun stuff. You always get the fun stuff, Brian. Well, thanks for being here. Well, it's always refreshing to have our senior analyst at Omdia back. He's our security enterprise expert as well. He's Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, have you recovered from traveling?
I've not only recovered from traveling, I've recovered from COVID. So I'm feeling lots better in pretty much every direction. Feeling semi-human and ready to take on the world, which is a good thing because I've got a lot coming up in terms of writing about the things I saw and heard about at Black Hat and DEF CON and doing other cool stuff around cybersecurity. So no time to waste. Got to get to writing soon.
What do you think? What was the biggest surprise you saw at Black Hat this year?
It's interesting. I would say the big thing at Black Hat was the extent to which people are still talking about visibility. That was probably the most common word that I saw on displays was visibility. It seems like we keep building incredibly capable, remarkably complicated environments, and from the moment they go live, we have no clue what's actually inside them.
Right.
And so visibility is a huge deal, followed closely by the whole identity and access management component. Had a chance to talk to a lot of people doing interesting things in IAM, and between those two, I would say you cover a good 70% of the verbiage on displays around the conference.
I was like, well, looking forward to it. I'm actually looking forward to the coverage. Well, thanks for being back. Well, according to this, super busy, actually. It's been a super busy week in the enterprise. We've heard about the marketing trends around no and low code platforms and how they're actually helping organizations with digital transformation. But the question is, do they create security risk as well? I mean, can they help maybe with data security and privacy at the same time? It's a really great topic, kind of a two-sided of the coin scenario. So definitely get into that. Plus, we have a great guest today. He's Alex Iceman. He's founder and CEO of Genium. We're going to talk about the journey of an entrepreneur there, but we're also talking about market trends for businesses and the type of talent and solutions they are reaching for, and just how they can actually utilize new resources to meet the demands of the market. Lots of exciting stuff, so definitely stick around. But first, like we always do, let's go ahead and jump into this week's news blips. Bot marketplaces may be the place where evildoers are lurking to help attack your organization and steal data. That's right. According to a former cyber criminal who once worked with and betrayed the Secret Service, believes hackers have more prevalent and sophisticated tools than ever and are highly motivated to attack. Brett Shannon Johnson is now the chief criminal officer at Arcos Labs, a fraud prevention company. He describes tools that are so sophisticated and useful and have their own marketplace, like the bot marketplace called the Genesis Market, that organizations and governments should be very, very afraid. In fact, the interesting part of this is that 98% of cyber criminals are not using these tools yet, but they're so prevalent, they could become the norm. Now, the Genesis Market is a very interesting place. In fact, you can search for a target like Chase Bank or Bank of America, Google, or Walmart. It then deploys the bots that are accessing credentials for that target. It's essentially a bots as a service. They've asked me, I coined the term, folks. That's right. Johnson thinks that with the economic downturn and the availability of tools and marketplaces, it will lead to be actually an uptick in online financial crimes with bots. Now, to add a bit of validity to this statement, data shows that cybercrime has been on the rise, especially when it comes to cryptocurrency. In fact, last month, hackers reportedly stole more than $190 million of crypto from the crypto firm Nomad. Now, a recent report by Chain Analysis estimates that the amount stolen in cryptocurrency heists is up actually 60% this year. Hey, there's a marketplace for apps. Why not bots?
Well, according to an article published this week at Dark Reading, there's a new old problem that's rapidly building for corporate cybersecurity teams, and that problem is spelled IoT. The article points out that researchers at Clarity have found a 57% increase in IoT bug disclosures compared to this time last year. The increase comes, they say, courtesy of a combination of more connected products, greater security by researchers, and regulations requiring disclosure of vulnerabilities. That growing number of vulnerabilities means, researchers say, that companies need both greater visibility into the IoT devices on their networks and greater capabilities for managing those devices. Now, part of that visibility will need to include the extended Internet of Things, or XIoT, because who doesn't need another acronym? And that's a term that we're hearing more and more and more. Now, XIoT includes things like devices embedded in other systems, medical devices, and other operational technology devices that might not traditionally have been included in the old IoT category. Clarity says that 747 vulnerabilities were disclosed in XIoT devices between the start of January and the end of June, a 57% jump from the previous 6 months. The affected products came from 86 different vendors, and for the first time, proactive disclosure by vendors was the second most common way that information on vulnerabilities was published. That comes after disclosure by third-party firms. If you're keeping score, Siemens represented the top disclosure of XIoT vulnerabilities at 214, with Reolink second at 87, followed by Schneider with 52. Now, one of the things that makes this category hard to track is that the definition of what precisely should be included is a moving target. NIST, for example, defines IoT devices as those that, quote, have at least one transducer, sensor or actuator, for interfacing directly with the physical world and at least one network interface for interfacing with the digital world, end quote. Some companies put devices for the medical field or industrial applications in separate categories. Others include those and have begun including mobile devices like smartphones and tablets, because so many firms use mobile devices as a way to monitor and control their network of IoT devices. One way or another, via one definition or another, IoT bugs and vulnerabilities are an issue that is unlikely to go away within any of our professional lifetimes.
So when I read the headline on this article that comes to us from Ars Technica, I had to check the publication date because it felt like, a blast from the past. So get this. The headline reads, Japan declares war on floppy disks for government use. And I go, really? Anyway, so the story goes, Japan's newly appointed Minister of Digital Affairs, Taro Kono, has declared war on the floppy disk and other forms of obsolete media, which the government still requires as a submission medium for about 1,900 types of business applications and other forms. The goal is to modernize the procedures by moving the information submission process online. Kono announced the initiative during a press conference in Japan this last Tuesday, according to Bloomberg. Legal issues have prevented the modernization to cloud data storage in the past, and Japanese government offices often use CDs, mini disks, or floppy disks to accept submissions from the public and businesses. For example, Japan's Mainichi newspaper reported in the December 2021 issue that Tokyo police lost 2 floppy disks containing information on 38 public housing applicants. A digital task force group led by Kono will announce how to fix those issues by the end of the year. Well, it isn't that far-fetched. Just before I retired, I was hit with being forced to physically sign quite a few documents, even though the federal version of the same document have allowed digital signatures for many years. My opinion is that Japan, like all too many bureaucracies, are bound by rules followed slavishly by unthinking drones that can't see beyond what has been done for years. So it's this day of labor shortages. Perhaps we should and can rethink bureaucratic procedures administered by robotic, unthinking humans and, replace them with technology? Does that make sense? Come on, people. Really? Floppies?
It's been a busy week for ISPs and state governments when it comes to the FCC funding broadband deployments. According to Ars Technica, this past week, the FCC announced a $791 million Rural Digital Opportunity Fund grant to provide 6 broadband providers dollars to help with network expansions to more than 350,000 homes and businesses in 19 states over the next 10 years. Now, the funding will help to support a whole slew of network technologies, including gigabit service, hybrid fiber, fixed wireless deployments that will provide end-user locations with either fiber or fixed wireless network service used in licensed spectrum. In addition to the FCC funding, the Treasury Department and National Telecommunications and Information Administration announced grants for states and tribal entities as well. On a less enthusiastic note, a few weeks ago, they actually rejected SpaceX Starlink's final application to receive that $885.51 million tentatively awarded to the Pi auction. Now, while the Pi FCC was criticized for giving Starlink money for locations or adjacent to the major airports, the FCC has doubted whether Starlink's technology can meet the funding's program speeds and latency requirements when deployed to hundreds of thousands of customers. There were other rejections in there as well. Despite the high-profile rejections, the FCC today said that The RDOF is now set to provide more than $6 billion to applicants in 47 states. Now, the PI-FCC originally awarded $9.2 billion to 180 bidders. Lots of ISPs listed in this article that are still getting this funding right now. In fact, the biggest broadband fund of all is still coming. That's a $42.45 billion broadband equity access and deployment program from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Now, it does have a long tail, so that means it's going to won't be for a while. That money is being distributed by the NTIA and won't be released until after the FCC finishes a large project to upgrade the map of where providers do and don't offer broadband. And with all this money being thrown around for infrastructure expansion, one hopes that competition increases in the market, also making it more affordable to all levels of consumer and business. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bytes. But before we get to the bytes, we do have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's New Relic. Now, I know lots of developers out there, and you are some of the most curious people. I know I'm one of them. I'm very curious, and the first to explore the newest technology, digging into the documentation, not only wanting to know how things work, but why they work. That's exactly why so many engineers turn to New Relic. New Relic gives you data about what you build and shows you what's really happening in your software lifecycle. It's a single place to see the data from your entire stack, so you don't have to look into like 16 different tools and make those connections act manually. Now, New Relic pinpoints issues down to the line of code, so you know why problems are happening and resolve them quickly. And that's why dev and ops teams at DoorDash, GitHub, Epic Games, and more than 14,000 other companies use New Relic to debug and improve their software. Now, when teams come together around data, it allows you to triage problems, be confident in those decisions, and reduce the time needed to implement resolutions using data, not opinions. Use the data platform made for the curious. Right now, you can get access to the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigabytes of data per month free forever. No credit card required. Sign up at newrelic.com/enterprise. That's NEWRELIC.com/enterprise. newrelic.com/enterprise. And we thank New Relic their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the bites. We have a good couple articles here. Now, no and low code platforms and tooling is really the rage of the industry right now. It empowers organizations to really develop solutions without specialized roles to get there. Plus, digital transformation is kind of the forcing function behind all of this, is to use the tools to really help be successful in that transformation after the transformation. So there's some stats here. In fact, Gartner projects that the use of NoCode LowCode tools will grow from almost 25% of applications in 2020 to 70% in 2025. Now, the question is, can the same tools that help businesses develop solutions for their workplace also have a weak point? Security, maybe? The malicious actors are constantly spinning up new tactics and attack models, and no and low code tools leave huge backdoors sometimes for them to be exploited. Now, an assessment by the Open Web Application Security Project, or OWASP, reveals several no and low code security risks, from account impersonation to authorization misuse to credential sharing and much more. And for some observers, no and low code tools actually sacrifice on security on the altar without really improving productivity. They just kind of leave it out there. Even though these tools are very much in clear and present danger, the industry has moved to using no and low code tooling to actually help automate other things like privacy operations by securing data and meeting data privacy regulations like GDPR and CCPA. So it's at the other side of the coin. They're saying, hey, let's go use these to actually make it easier for you to secure your data and actually fund compliance for your data. Now, some actually offer automatic fulfillment of privacy requests via data subject and data access requests, which is a requirement of GDPR out there and under the rights access. And it also handle consent management and third-party risk assessment. In fact, some of the no-code, low-code integrations are out there for it, as well as Salesforce, HubSpot, Shopify, and other data sources allow clients to automate privacy and deletion requests concerning in those systems. And the data mapping tools can also help create GDPR records and processing activity, and tracks all personally identifiable information collected in those client systems as well. So this is really a case where no and low-code solutions are helping organizations but they're also maybe hurting organizations. So I think this is a very interesting topic. I want to bring my co-host back in because, Curtis, this is a polarizing topic. It seems like no and low code platforms are more positive than negative, especially in this case, they're helping data and privacy. Is that the consensus that you're seeing when you talk to organizations?
Well, I think you got a bunch of moving parts here, and it's important to look at them because the big place where NoCode LowCode came in, and the reason that it began to pick up steam, was the idea that it would let subject matter experts, the people who are actually in the business units, do development of applications that put their business processes into action, rather than having to go through the human chain of explaining what they want to do to developers who then have to build into the applications and the systems, send it back, go through multiple revisions. With all of that, the big problem traditionally has been that these business unit subject matter experts don't know IT security. So the big question on security is whether the issues with NoCode LowCode security stemmed from inherent issues with the system, or the fact that people who don't know IT security was using those systems. I think what we're seeing now is a shift. We've had guests on in the recent past here at This Week in Enterprise Tech, where they were low-code system manufacturers, low-code environment publishers, who found that their systems are being used primarily by professional developers. And in those cases, there's no reason to think that the security and the controls for privacy can't be just as good as those that come about through traditional development, and can actually be greater because you have people who know security, who have put those controls in place, and there's not a good way around them in the low-code environment. So I think it's a moving target. It's a shifting scenario that depends heavily on exactly which generation of low-code, no-code you're using, and who you've got back at your shop who have their hands on the mice and the keyboards.
I like that. Well, Gilbert, I want to throw this to you because obviously we talked to a lot of organizations trying to use no and low code platforms for many different reasons. Obviously, because they don't necessarily have the skill. Curtis is saying, hey, it's not always going to be a replacement for that skill. Is that something that you see when you talk to organizations or people around, hey, like most of these tools can do what they need to do, and if the right generation, they can be secure enough, and we can make use out of it to make our business better. And then there's an extent, there's a limit to where then I need to go and get that expertise.
Yeah, our viewers are probably noticed. We've had lots of people on talking no code, low code. It is a mega hot topic. And, just a couple episodes ago, episode 508, we had OutSystems, and they're talking about a lot of process controls that they've put in place. Now, like we said, it is a polarizing topic. Some people are going to go, the sky is falling, it's bad, it's going to be the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, there's also the opinion that we don't have enough people in DevOps to be able to go and do what is in essence stovepipe applications, customized applications anymore. We just don't have the skills. Well, the warm bodies to fulfill the skills. Let's call it that. So let's look at the two sides of the coin. One, on the positive side, because the tools are available to the subject matter experts, we might actually start getting some better applications faster and better meet the needs of the users. On the flip side, we also have a lot of issues with things like dependencies. That's one of the big issues that have come up in several conversations. Because they're compiling down to something, whether it's interpreted code, so it has to be recompiled every time it's run, or whether it's compiled down to a base language like C# or something, there are going to be dependencies involved. And so on the plus side, that means if we find a problem in dependency, the system can slip it out and slip a fixed version in faster than if we had to go and recompile a stovepipe application from scratch. Again, some of the people that are talking about this, it's like, well, shouldn't they all compile down? Shouldn't they all be going to a fairly low-level language so that they're faster, more efficient, and so forth? Some people have said, no, we want the flexibility. We want to be able to go in and say, oh, we found a goof in our logic. Let's go and change it quickly. So the two sides of the coin are going to be really interesting conversations as time goes on. Our guest, no, we are not taking pot shots at our guest. The whole idea behind this dark reading article is just looking at some of the issues, just like when the web first came out. I was working at the University of Hawaii for the first time, and this new thing called the web, World Wide Web, that was really cool. But there was so many flaws in it that the world was predicting, oh, it's never going to work. Well, the world has changed, hasn't it? Well, maybe NoCode LowCode is one of those things we're just going to have to see how the market turns out. There's going to be plus sides. There's going to be negative sides. I'm hoping market pressure will do it. Now, going back to what Curt was saying about security and so forth, one of the things this article does say is that security of NoCode Solutions is a concern. And of all the respondents, only 7% of the survey respondents said security wasn't a concern. And I'll bet you that those 7% probably didn't read the question very carefully, because everyone I've talked to, one of the first things out of their mouth is, well, is it secure? And knowing Curt, that's probably going to be one of our questions we're going to pose to our guest that's coming up in not too terribly long.
I want to ask Curt one more thing, because I think that's an interesting point of view, because a lot of customers, IT people, implementers who are using these no-code, low-code platforms, they just make an assumption that the platform that they're building on has security around it. And I'll give you an example. Like for instance, Salesforce allows you to use no-code, low-code to enhance their platform, but they also compile. You can actually build things in JavaScript as well, so if you're a real developer, and inject things like new components and so on. But they go through the extent of trying to isolate things into special containers and so on, so you can't get out, so that you're more secure and you can't do bad things or malicious things. But it seems like potentially maybe people assume that's the case with most of these platforms. What do you think, Curt?
Yeah, and that's where you get into trouble. I remember long ago being taught the problem definition of assume, why we don't assume, and that hasn't changed. I think where we get into trouble is when we as managers, as developers, as business owners assume that surely someone in the development chain is providing security. We might not know who it is, but we just can't believe that no one's doing it. And so we go along assuming that this security has been applied. We need to be asking the hard questions about precisely who is responsible for the security of the system being developed, what the basis of that security is, and just how good it is, what precisely it's providing. Because if we don't know the answers to those questions, then the odds increase exponentially that actual security is going to fall in the cracks between the various components. And the only thing resembling security is actually going to be provided by the threat actors who try to make sure that their nefarious work isn't interfered with.
Right. So it's good to evaluate the platforms you're using. So I definitely agree with that. Thank you, Curtis. Well, I think that does it for the bites. We want to bring the guests in to drop some knowledge on the TWiET Riot. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's UserWay.org. Here's a little bit more about them.
UserWay.org. I'm talking about making your website ADA compliant, accessible. Not only is it the right thing to do, because you're opening up your website to a much larger group, 60 million plus people, you have a responsibility to make your site accessible. It's a public entity, so you got to make it accessible. And with UserWay, it's easy. That was my biggest concern was, I can't afford it or it's going to be too hard. No, UserWay is really affordable and it's really easy. And incredible, it's AI-powered. It tirelessly enforces all the accessibility guidelines, the WCAG guidelines. And I love this, so do our engineers. It's one line of JavaScript. That's it. Because UserWay is so good, it's used by more than 1 million websites, including the big guys, Coca-Cola, Disney, eBay. These are companies that really have to be accessible, and UserWay can do that. As you get bigger, they scale with you. If they can handle Disney, absolutely they can handle you. They make best-in-class, enterprise-level accessibility tools available to you, your small or medium-sized business. And then as you scale, you need UserWay, and you're ready. It just makes business sense. Some of the biggest problems, nav menus, very difficult. So the way this works, if you're blind or you're using accessibility tools, there is what they call an accessibility layer. That's what the screen reader sees. So really what UserWay does is make sure that all the information available to the front page to the sighted user is available to the browser in the accessibility layer. It changes colors. Now you've got your Pantone color for your business. Of course, we do too. It doesn't change that, but it adjusts hue and luminance so it's easier for people with vision issues to read. So UserWay will generate alt tags. That's one of the reasons it needs AI. It can actually see the picture and generate an alt tag that matches the picture automatically. You can go in if you want. You can modify it, of course. It fixes violations like vague links, fixes broken links, makes sure that your website uses accessible colors, and you'll get a detailed report of all the violations that were fixed on your website so you know exactly what it did. Plus, you can work with it. UserWay integrates seamlessly with your site builder software. Let UserWay help your business meet its compliance goals, improve the experience for your users. UserWay can make any website fully accessible, ADA compliant, and everyone who visits can browse seamlessly, customize it to fit their needs. It's a great way to show your brand's commitment to the millions of people with disabilities. It's the right thing to do.
UserWay can make any website fully accessible and ADA compliant. With UserWay, everyone who visits your site can browse seamlessly and customize it to fit their needs. It's also a perfect way to showcase your brand's commitment to millions of people with disabilities. Go to userway.org/twit and get 30% off UserWay's AI-powered accessibility solution. Book a short call and get their accessibility guide. UserWay, making the internet accessible for everyone. Visit userway.org/twit today. And we thank userway.org for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring a guest to drop some knowledge on the TWiET Riot. And today we have Alex Iceman. He's founder and CEO of Genium. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you've had quite the journey and career. A professional athlete to founder and CEO of tech industry. And, we have quite a diverse audience out there from different stages in their career. Can you take us on a journey and what brought you to Genium?
Absolutely. I was really good with computers, probably starting at the age of 10. And my dad brought some old computers, very old 286 machines with the green monitors, and I was able to just play around with them, disassemble and do certain things. I wasn't doing much of programming, but I was enjoying kind of geeking out on those with those machines. And overall, I've been always next to machines, but I mean the computers. But then fast forward, I got into chemistry at school, and chemistry was a big part of my life. And then hockey happened at the age of 11. I played until I was 15, and went to college and got my first master's in biochemistry. And in parallel, I was doing hockey, and I was a professional hockey referee for many years throughout the college, and then so on and on. And at the age of 18, I've decided to open up my first company before I turned 25. I saw a friend of mine and his dad running his family shop, and I kind of liked that lifestyle and how they could build your own schedule and such. And I kind of made a promise to myself before I turned 25, I would open up my company. And then I kind of forgot about that promise. And fast forward, I went to the United States for the first time when I was 22, I think. And I was fascinated. I came to San Francisco. I was fascinated by just the ecosystem and the startup environment, the take it talk. And that's where I decided that biochemistry is not going to cut it, and I wasn't kind of enjoying it as much. And that's where I went and got my second master's in computer science and mathematics. And I really loved it. And that's propelled me into software development field. And I moved to the United States, got my first job. I remember on the job interview, I presented my phone, which was iPhone 4S, I believe. And it had both iOS and Android installed on the iPhone. And I was able to, hack it up the way that and it impressed the interviewer a lot. He'd never seen anything like that, and I've got a really good job offer. And not to mention, my thesis was in cybersecurity and applying mathematical analysis and statistics, preventing DDoS attacks. And so I was into white hat hacking, and I was able to install Android on my iPhone, which was pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah,
and
cool.
Fast forward, started my company at 25, and everything went there. Hockey is still a big part of my life. Professional hockey referee still in the American League, and fly airplanes as well as a pilot, and compose some music too for films. But software is a big part of my life, and as an engineer and an entrepreneur, I'm here to share my mostly life lessons, so people don't really step in the same mistakes that I did.
Well, you've definitely combined a lot of passions together. I definitely give you that. That's amazing. Now, let's talk a little bit about Genium, because I think it's a very interesting company, and it kind of reaches different sectors of the market. One being that it does help with kind of a professional services consulting type thing, but also providing resources to organizations to help solve some of the technical challenges out there. And I can tell you that the price tag of software engineers, especially in the US, sometimes especially now, is actually on the rise. What other locations around the world are you kind of working with, and what types of projects, what kind of demand is driving those things?
Great. I think it's important to share the story how it all started. I think I started working as a software engineer, and I started first my consulting company here in San Francisco, and I was hiring engineers here in San Francisco, but it was impossible to compete with big guys, big names. They were offering huge salaries and stuff. And my clients started to reach out to me and say, "Hey, Alex, can you build software or hire developers at the same quality but somewhere else?" And so we find a better price tag. And that's how I started looking outside of the United States. And I did a lot of test trial projects in different regions of the world: China, India, Eastern Europe. I've done Philippines, and then I started doing Latin America, and that's where Argentina came about. And I've had great success there. Really high quality engineers, and then we grew into Latin America. Similar time zone, really good English, and the process that we have to get the best of the best really helps to build amazing teams for clients here in the U.S. Regarding the industries, I really like to have fun. My background is cybersecurity, so Genium is ITAR certified by the Department of Defense and Department of State to work on top top kind of secret projects, level 1, level 2 outside of the United States, and take on really exciting stuff. So cybersecurity at the core of how we hire people, the background checks. And I also made a promise to myself not to hire people who will do spaghetti code, because I've done a lot of untangling of that in my life. Right. And it was so painful. I said, no, we're going to get good architects that know proper data structure, algorithms. They know how to build an architect properly, software. So we built something that everybody will enjoy interacting with, and engineers will enjoy looking at the code. And that's how we started to grow. And the clients we serve, they're all in major verticals of either data protection or threat preventions or identity verifications and such and such. So it's not necessarily cybersecurity, but those companies really need good practices around hiring and building the right software with the right architecture.
It sounds like you do kind of work all over the market. We talked a little bit about in our previous segment around no-code, low-code platforms, how it's attempting to help organizations that don't have the skills kind of bring to market and digitally transform. When do you see the threshold? Where's the threshold at when like no-code, low-code platforms are not enough, and now you need to go and come to some organization like yours to really provide the professional experience?
Such an amazing question. We do have several clients that provide no-code platform. So I do work with them day in and out, and I know a lot of the background and how they come about and the benefits of it. And I think it's a great thing. That's an abstract on top of the programming languages you have, and that's what's been happening with the industry since assembly. And then you have higher level programming languages and then frameworks, and now you have no-code, low-code platforms, and it's just a natural evolution of the software development process. And I think it's a great tool. And I want to say something that's very important that struck my nerve when I was getting my degree at mathematics and computer science, that security and cybersecurity is not a question of if, it's a question of time throughout which your data will be secure. Every system could be hacked with basically enough money and enough time, and it's just the time period throughout which data will stay secure, and you constantly have to keep updating things and adhering to checklists. So I think it's a great tool, and I think you got to pick the right tool for the job. No-code, low-code platforms allow to do that, allow bigger businesses to transform themselves digitally, not necessarily having the know-how of software development or like huge engineering and R&D departments. And I think it's a great tool. Regarding cybersecurity around those tools, at least what I see and how we approach that is having checklists on every level of software development, whether it's planning, whether it's testing, implementing, and frankly, the vectors of attacks haven't changed much. They're very similar since the inception of internet. And as long as you check those categories and man-in-the-middle attack and it's Stack Overflow attacks, and they're very similar. The most weak element is a human element. So if you try to eliminate that with procedures and checklists, that makes it a really good software, and just keeping track of all the security updates on libraries you have. So I think talking about the low-code, no-code, it's a great solution. I think at a certain point of time, you still need specialized engineers that know how those platforms work. So you basically create a double high-level abstract, but you still need engineers to figure out how to customize those abstracts. So even though it's low-code, no-code, you still need to have engineers specifically trained to do those. The problem with this, it's such a unique and narrow market because we have multiple companies. They all have their own standards. You don't have enough engineering force to customize those platforms. A good example would be Salesforce. There are Salesforce engineers, which is its own breed, and it's hard to get those just because it's much harder to get those than let's say React or JavaScript engineers or C++ or Objective-C or Kotlin, because they're PHP. Those are widely available.
Interesting. You're right.
and those no-code, low-code platforms kind of limit the bandwidth of where you can get engineers and train them and support your customers too. It's a big problem to hire, train, and not everybody. You have to sell the platform, right? Not everybody want to be a Salesforce engineer because they've studied, let's say, backend, and they want to do Node or Go, and whatever it is, they want to do APIs and the kind of lower level thing, and it's hard to even sell them the idea that now they have to learn this new platform, which is great and amazing, and become the engineer and an expert there. But I think it's doable.
I actually see a lot of job postings out there for, like you said, specialized platforms like the Appians of the world, the Salesforce of the world. So you're right. Like there's definitely super special areas that you have to go to sometimes just to kind of get somebody to build on top of that platform. I do want to shift really quick to something else before we have to go to our ad. You talked a little about security and how a lot of the different organizations you work for are looking for security solutions. One thing we've talked about in the past is around open source software and how, like, with the recent supply chain attacks, sometimes open source might not be the best approach when you're building software for making things more secure. What's your point of view here? What do you guys? How are you guys involved with open source, and how are you use it with your solutions?
It's a great question. So open source is widely used in a variety of different industries, and we're not an exception. You use open source, and you always use stable versions of libraries of open source that have been there for quite a while. So you have to pick the stable versions that you're going to start with, and then monitor the security vulnerabilities. And for certain microservices that are more prone to certain attacks, you really carefully check what you're implementing, or certain things you would really copy and implement it yourself and test against those vectors of attacks. But I think open source in general is an amazing tool, and we'll see a rise of open source communities in the upcoming years. And my true belief that the open source is the only power to solve one of the most challenging problems in humanity right now, like curing cancer, or helping with medications, opening up new stuff, AI, and only like a company, an enterprise company, cannot hire hundreds of thousands of developers just contributing to an open source community or a product and a cause. And it's really an amazing power, and I think we'll see more of it. In terms of security, really what we do is we lock down a certain number, like the version numbers, and we track their updates and security vulnerabilities, and that's what you have to do. Pick a stable version.
We have lots more to talk about. We want to bring my co-host back in. I'm sure we'll get into the security topic as well. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat discussing tech topics big, small, and strange. Now, Compiler comes to you from the makers of Command Line Heroes, another of our sponsors, and is hosted by Angela Andrews and Brent Simoneau. And technology can be big, bold, bizarre, and complicated. Compiler unravels industry topics, trends, and the things you've always wanted to know about tech through interviews with the people who know it best. Now, on their show, you'll hear a chorus of perspectives from the diverse communities behind the code. Compiler brings together a curious team of Red Hatters to tackle big questions in tech, like what is technical debt, or what are tech hiring managers actually looking for, and do you have to know how to code to get started in open source? Good question. Now, episode 2 covers what can video games teach us about edge computing. Now, the internet is a patchwork of international agreements and varying infrastructure, but there's something coming to change the ways we connect. And in the episode of Compiler, hosts explore what edge computing could mean for people who are enjoying video games and what this form of entertainment can teach us about the technology itself. Now, episode 9, how are tech hubs changing to now? Traditionally, if someone wanted a career in tech, they needed to move to a tech hub, a city packed with startups and talent, but things are starting to change. Now, the hosts of Compiler speak to a few of change makers out there who are thinking outside the physical and social dimensions we've come to associate with innovation. Now, the edge computing episode was excellent. Definitely listen to that one. That did an amazing job of distilling down what edge computing is and just how practical applications make it seem more accessible to everyone. Definitely check that episode out. Learn more about Compiler at red.ht/TWIT. New episodes are out now. Go and download them at any time, and be sure to check back for new shows. Listen to Compiler on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcast. We'll also include a link on the episode's show page. And we thank Compiler their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Alex Iceman. He's founder and CEO of Genium. I do want to bring my co-host back in because I'm sure they want to ask some questions. Curt, I want to go to you first because I think we've been kind of talking about security for a little bit, and you definitely got probably some inklings for talking about security.
Oh, absolutely. Alex, I'm curious. You talked about hiring security folks, and that's something that a lot of people are trying to do these days. My question to you is, how do you advertise to get good security people, and how do you vet them? Do you go simply on which certifications they have, or are there other things that you look for?
It's a great question. So first of all, we never advertise. So you will never see a job posting active for a position that we're hiring. So we always scout. And the people that are part of the interview, they've been selected to be part of the process, and we reach out and invite them into a process for a specific project. And if they're interested, they would apply, and or not even apply, they would just really reply, because we do reach out to them directly. And that's something that's been unique to us and very helpful in the process. Regarding the security experts, they're really tough to hire. They're really tough to find. We pride ourselves in hiring really skilled software engineers. It's not necessarily security, but they have to know the right the right architectural decisions and best practices of hiring. Building secure software. But when it comes to interviewing, it's never just about the resume. It's really about first your network. So we have a really good network, and people do refer people over to us to specific projects. We pride ourselves on having very excited projects and clients that we pick and choose ourselves too. So guys are very excited to work and help them. We have at least 4 interviews, and 2 of them are technical. And you always ask for those questions. The security is certain security vectors, certain design patterns questions, and there's coding interviews. And you look for you look for the right mindset. You look for, and that's what the mindset of mathematician gave me, that perspective on how to organize things. And that's what we look for at other people's and engineers that we hire. Really rigorous process, and never advertise, hey, come and apply.
Well, I'd like to follow that a little bit, because when you're talking to them, do you look for things? You say that you're looking for developers who are aware of security rather than security people. Are there particular practices, particular best practices that you listen for? Are there particular things that you look for in terms of the kind of projects that they've worked on? As I said, I'm curious because this is a problem that an awful lot of managers have these days, trying to figure out who they can bring on who actually knows something about security.
True. It's a great question. So I will talk specifically about, let's say, mobile app development and the security in that world, because that's where I've spent majority of my time. And I did quite a few interviews in the beginning of Genium, getting those people on board. So you would talk about specific questions. In mobile development, it's all about securing your database, checking if your device is jailbroken, and then looking at the certificate pinning, so you can really make sure that the certificate is not spoofed. And you get the list of questions related to those really core kind of like vectors of attack on the mobile device, and you start asking, hey, have you done anything with certificates? How do you store certificates? How do you store data? Have you ever encrypted your database? Where do you store the key for your database in a keychain, let's say? And then how do you check against the jailbroken device? What if you detect the jailbroken device? What happens? And you kind of start digging into those things, and then you evaluate this person and their extent on knowing certain things. So we have a set of those questions per industry, per platform, and we look for the major vectors of attack. And you start talking to people, and you understand if they've done it or no, if they're cautiously look for those things when they build software, and some people don't, and they're not a good fit for certain projects. They go and work. It doesn't mean we're not getting them, because they might be a very good fit for another team, a front end team or something else, and then they could benefit another project. But we would vet the hardcore people that are building really key components for software, that are aware of those key vectors of attack on a specific language platform framework.
Well, and speaking of platforms and things like that, the big rush right now is people want mobile. I keep hearing it time and time again. But I only hear about mobile in terms of US-centric applications. What about when we start getting mobile applications further away? Central America, South America, Southeast Asia, where we don't always have terrific connectivity and we don't always have really great security. So here's two facet question. One, are you actually seeing these NoCode, LowCode solutions and so forth dealing with spotty connectivity and recovery? And then also, are these people still recommending you do a VPN, or are people actually trying to build that into their NoCode, LowCode solutions?
Great two questions. So first, we serve a variety of clients here in the U.S. that do, and in Europe as well, in London, and in fact, that do low-code, no-code platforms. We have not seen them dealing with low bandwidth and low connectivity. It kind of never came up on the radar as a specific problem, and I think you got to listen to your target audience and see what the problem is they're experiencing. And most of those platforms are used at offices where they have good Wi-Fi's. And if you're looking at mobile apps for specific applications, we have dealt with that. We've built quite a few apps in Brazil for Brazilian market, and we've built some of that in Africa. And one in particular, I remember, and we have dealt with that. And you have specific practice. We actually tested against the lower bandwidth. There's a simulator on your Mac that can lower your bandwidth on Wi-Fi and test in the simulator and a spotty connection. A lot of it comes down to having your offline database, and that's what we do. In the majority of the apps, you have an offline database, and there's an offline API and online API. And once you go online, you sync up your database to a version, and then when you open the app and there's no connectivity, you still have a lot of content. You can even do certain things, and it's a really best practice to synchronize your data off of your phone to the cloud and back and forth, and creates a couple of other challenges if you have multiple clients synchronizing the same data into your account, but it's a good problem to have. We typically do that as a best practice. You have an offline storage and online, and then you synchronize them.
Wow, that went fast. Alex, thank you so much for being here. And since we're running a little bit low on time, I did want to at least give you a chance to tell the folks at home where they can learn more about Genium, maybe where they can go get started, get in touch with you, especially if they need security professionals.
Absolutely. Well, connect with me on LinkedIn. Go to the website, fill out the form, and I'm very available online. And ping me a message. I'd really love to be of help and see if we can help you.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Alex. Appreciate it. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise and enterprise IT podcast in the universe. So definitely tune your podcatcher to TWIET. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-host, starting with our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what's going on for you in the coming weeks, and where can people find you and all your work?
Well, I've got a bunch of research that I'm working on, especially now that I'm healthy again. And for the writing that I do, for all of my opinions, feel free to follow me on Twitter at KG4GWA, or look over on Dark Reading at darkreading/Omdia. Try to do writing over there, as well as get into LinkedIn. I did a follow-up to Black Hat on LinkedIn, and I have more coming up there as well. So just trying to be out there as much as I can and enjoying being healthy once again.
Glad you're back. Thanks, Curtis. Well, we also have to thank our very own Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebird, what's going on for you in the coming weeks? Where can people find you and maybe get in touch with you?
Well, I post to Twitter on a pretty regular basis. I am ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab, and would love to hear from you. You know, we get some interesting ideas. Obviously, we're going fairly heavy on the no-code, low-code world because that's where the market's pushing us. But we also try to cover other things. We've had a lot of requests for more on IoT. We actually had someone requesting that I do a story on my path towards automating my home. You know, I'm designing the house that we're in now so that we can age in place. And part of that is making sure I add in a lot of voice command and things like that and secure my IoT facilities so that when I'm not able to get around so well, it's not going to get hacked out from under me. But lots of things to talk about, lots of things to explore, and we like hearing from you. You're also welcome to throw an email at me. I am Cheebert, spelled Cheebert at twit.tv, but you're also welcome to throw email at TWiET at twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. Today's conversation was a lot of fun. Brings back a lot of memories. I actually was involved with designing a system so that on military bases, the guys at the front gate where there is usually not great connectivity can still go and pull against the Department of Defense personnel database to go and verify that you are who you are when you try to get onto a U.S. military base. Wish I had no-code, low-code then because the prototypes took forever to get vetted for use in those applications.
Right. Thanks for being here, Brian. Well, folks, we have to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week to watch and listen to our show to get your enterprise and IT goodness. And we want to make it easy for you to listen, watch, and catch up on your enterprise and IT news right now. Go to our show page, twit.tv/TWiET. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, show notes, the co-host information, guest information, and the links of the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos there, you'll get those really helpful subscribe and download links. Support the show by getting your audio version, your video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your devices or any one of your podcast applications because we're on all of them. Just definitely subscribe, support the show, and we'll be there for you. Plus, you may have heard, that's right, Club TWiT. That's right. It's another way. It's a members-only ad-free podcast service with a bonus TWiT Plus feed that you really can't get anywhere else, and it's only $7 a month. And a lot of great things about Club TWiT. I'm using one of them right now. That's right. It's a members-only Discord server, exclusive access to that. But you get to chat with the host, get to chat with us behind the scenes, producers, separate discussion channels, special events, lots of great stuff coming out of there. So lots of fun discussions on there. Definitely check that out. Join Club TWiT and be part of the movement. Go to twit.tv/Club TWiT and join the club. Now, Club TWiT now offers corporate group plans as well. That's right. It's a great way to give your team access to our ad-free tech podcasts. The plans start at 5 members at a discounted rate of $6 each per month, and you can add as many seats as you'd like. It's a great way for your IT department, your sales department, your developers, your tech teams to stay up to date with access to all of our podcasts. And just like regular members, they can join the TWiT Discord server and get the TWiT Plus bonus feed as well. So definitely join Club TWiT at twit.tv/Club TWiT. And after you subscribe, you can impress your friends, your family members, your coworkers with the gift of TWiET. We talk about a lot of fun stuff on this show, and I guarantee they can find it fun and interesting as well. So definitely offer it to them and have them subscribe as well. And if you're already subscribed, we do this show live. That's right. We do it live, folks. 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays. You can check that out. All of our live streams are at live.twit.tv. Come see how the pizza's made, all the behind the scenes, all the banter and fun we do here at TWiT. So definitely check that out. And if you're going to watch the show live, please jump into the chat room as well. Our IRC channel and chat room is there. It's a lot of fun characters in there, and we got a lot of great topics and discussions in there right now. There they are, irc.twit.tv. If you want to just use the browser for it, we can definitely be part of that fun as well. Now, I want you to hit me up on Twitter because we have we always looking for tech topics and show topics, but of course I love having discussions with listeners. In fact, I had a technical support guy actually email me separately after I was going through a case around an issue that I was having. He sent me a separate email over Twitter. Actually, he sent me a separate direct message saying, "Hey, I just realized you're from TWIET. I listened to that show. Here's some topics I want to hear." And he sent me some stuff. So a lot of great discussions I have on there. So definitely hit me up on there or LinkedIn. I want to hear your show ideas and have some good conversations. So definitely hit me there. If you want to know what I do during my normal work week at Microsoft, definitely check out developers.microsoft.com/office. There it is. Latest, greatest ways for you to customize Office to make it more productive for your organization, whether it's using modern technologies like web technologies, TypeScript, JavaScript, or it's even still using C# or C++, some of the more legacy stuff. But you know what? Hey, you can want to customize it any way you want. We have a way for you. So definitely check that out. Of course, I want to make sure I thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially thank you to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we thank you for all their support over the years. Also want to thank everyone at TWiT, all the engineers and staff. I also want to thank Mr. Brian Chee one more time. He's not only our co-host, but he's also our tireless producer. That's right. He does all the bookings and the plannings for the show, and we couldn't do the show without him. So thank you, Cheebert, for all your support. And before we sign out, thank you to our editor for today. He makes ourselves look good after the fact. So thank you for all your support. Of course, also thank you to our TD. He's the talented Mr. Ant Pruitt, man behind the curtain there. He also does a fabulous show, not behind the curtain, but in front of the curtain. He does an amazing show called Hands-On Photography. I listen to it each and every week. I watch it and listen to it religiously because I learn something every week. Ant, what's going on this week? What can we learn this week?
Hey, Mr. Lou, thanks for the support. Yeah, we sat down with Mr. Zach Sedewong. He's a former creative director for a couple different brands out there. We talked about how to get yourself ready to shoot some product photographies for brands and really get their message across. And he had great energy, and it was just a lot of fun. So make sure y'all go check that out, twit.tv/hop.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. And until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep TWiET.
If you are looking for a midweek update on the week's tech news, I got to tell you, you got to check out Tech News Weekly. See, it's all kind of built in there with the title. You get to learn about the news in tech that matters. Every Thursday, Jason Howell and I talk to the people making and breaking the tech news, get their insights and their interesting stories. It's a great show to check out. twit.tv/TNW.
W